Hey everyone, welcome back to Best of Reddit Reality, where real stories go way deeper than fiction. Today's tale is about a lottery win that should have changed one woman's life for the better, but instead, it revealed just how toxic and entitled her family really was. What would you do if your own parents demanded $1 million mansion just because you struck gold? Grab a snack, because this five-part story is a roller coaster of betrayal, boundaries, and hard-earned peace. Let's get into it. Part 1, the win that changed everything. I've always considered myself a fairly average person. I'm 26, work in marketing for a small company, live in a one-bedroom apartment in a quiet city, and spend my weekends binge-watching true crime shows or hanging out with my cat, Miso. Life wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. I was drowning in student debt, driving a beat-up Corolla, and living paycheck to paycheck like most people my age. So when I bought a lottery ticket on a whim one Friday evening after work, because the jackpot was huge and my coworker dared me, I never imagined it would actually mean anything. But it did. I didn't even check the numbers until Sunday morning. I remember it so clearly. I was drinking coffee in my pajamas, half watching a documentary when the numbers came up on the screen. I matched all six, every single one. I thought it was a mistake. I must have checked it 10 times before I started hyperventilating. I had just won $1.2 million. After taxes and taking the lump sum, I was left with around $720,000. I cried, I laughed, I think I even threw up a little. My entire financial life had just changed overnight. No more debt, no more stress over emergency expenses. For the first time in my adult life, I could actually breathe. But here's where the story really begins. Because while I saw this as a chance to stabilize my future, my family saw it as their payday. At first, I only told 3 people. My best friend who helped me calm down, my boss because I needed time off to figure things out, and my parents. I genuinely thought my parents would be proud, that they'd be happy I could finally live without financial fear, that they'd just be happy for me. And at first they were. My mom screamed in excitement when I told her, and my dad immediately started asking questions. Are you sure it's real? When do you get the money? What are you going to do first? I told them my plan: pay off my student loans, buy a modest house outright, put a big chunk in investments, and save the rest so I could slowly transition into freelance work. I wanted to use this money to build a quiet, sustainable life. But I noticed a change in their tone when I said I was looking at houses in the $200K, $250K range. My mom wrinkled her nose. You could afford so much better than that. I shrugged. I don't want anything flashy, just something clean and in a safe area. That was the first red flag. The second came 2 days later, when my dad sent me an email titled A Few Ideas. Inside, a list of 5 homes he and my mom had picked out for themselves. Every single one of them was over $800,000. The most expensive was over $1.1 million. There were links, photos, and even a breakdown of how they'd help with property taxes. I stared at the email for a long time. My chest got tight. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. They actually expected me to buy them a house. A luxury house with my money. I waited a day before replying, trying to process everything. When I finally did, I kept it polite. I thanked them for the suggestions, then said something like, "Hey, I love you both, but I really want to be responsible with this money. I've already mapped out where most of it's going: debt, my own house, savings, and investments. I'm happy to help in other ways, but I'm not in a place to buy anyone else a home." I hit send, and just like that, everything shifted. My mom didn't respond for hours. When she finally did, it was a long paragraph about how I was being selfish, about how they'd sacrificed everything for me growing up, and how I owed it to them to make sure they were comfortable in retirement. My dad followed up shortly after with a snarky comment. "Nice to know where your priorities lie." I was stunned, hurt, but also confused. Was I being selfish? Should I have offered to help more? But then I remembered. I had already offered to pay off their car loans and help cover my younger brother's college tuition. I wasn't hoarding the money. I just wanted to use it wisely. I decided to take a step back and not engage. I thought maybe they just needed time to cool off. I was wrong, because the next day, I woke up to 10 missed calls from various family members, and a Facebook post from my aunt that simply read, "It's funny how money shows you people's true colors." Part 2, the family turns on me. The morning after I sent that email to my parents, I woke up to total chaos. 10 missed calls, 4 voicemails. My cousin Jenny had messaged me, "Call your mom now." I had texts from 2 aunts and even my godmother. who I hadn't spoken to in years. And then I saw the Facebook post. My Aunt Leela, my mom's sister, posted a cryptic but clearly pointed status. Some people forget where they came from the second they get a little money. Sad, really. And the comments, a mess of relatives chiming in. Ungrateful brats everywhere these days. Some people forget who raised them. If I ever hit the lottery, my family comes first. I felt like I was being publicly crucified, and no one even asked my side. It was obvious my parents had already told everyone, and they didn't just tell them I said no, they twisted the entire thing. My cousin Amanda messaged me privately. Your mom said you laughed when they asked for help. Is that true? No, that never happened. I was calm and respectful. I even offered to help with other things. But by the time I tried to defend myself, the family already had their narrative. I was the greedy one, the selfish lottery winner who turned her back on the people who made her who she is. It broke my heart. What hurt the most wasn't the gossip. It was how strategic it all felt. My mom knew exactly who to tell and how to phrase things so they'd back her. She played the victim. She cried to Aunt Leela that she was just hoping for a little comfort in her old age. Told Uncle Dean that I refused to help with my brother's education. A total lie. Even my grandma called me sobbing, asking why I was abandoning the family. I spent 2 full days calling people, explaining my side, sending screenshots of my email, even showing them the offer I had made to help with college costs. Some believed me, most didn't want to get involved. The worst confrontation came from my older cousin Greg, who called me out of the blue. Greg is kind of the golden child of the family, has a high-paying job, a wife, 2 kids, and always shows up in a suit to family gatherings, even when it's a barbecue. He said, look, I don't know the full story, but if I came into money like that, I would buy my parents a house. That's just what decent people do. I told him, Greg, you make 6 figures. You could buy them a house right now. Why don't you? He paused, then said, it's not my responsibility. That was the moment it clicked for me. It's not about what's right. It's about control. They see my money as their opportunity. And when I didn't hand it over, I wasn't just selfish, I was a threat to their narrative. The narrative that I owed them everything. And then came the uninvited visit. 3 days after the Facebook explosion, my parents showed up at my apartment. I didn't let them in, I talked to them through the door. My mom was crying again, but this time it felt forced. She started in on the guilt. We changed your diapers. We worked double shifts for you. And now you won't even take care of us. I told them again that I was helping, in ways I could afford, in ways that made sense. But I wasn't going to spend nearly all of my winnings on a $1 million house for them. I reminded them that I still needed to think about my own future. That's when my dad lost it. He shouted, loud enough for neighbors to hear, you think this money makes you better than us? We should have never told you to buy that damn ticket. I froze. That's when I realized they didn't love me for me. They loved me for what I could give them. And now that I wasn't giving them what they wanted, they were done pretending. I called the police, not to press charges, but to start a paper trail. I had a bad feeling. If things were escalating this fast, I needed to be ready. After they left, I sat in silence for a long time. No TV, no music, just me and Miso on the couch. I had money, I had freedom, but I had never felt more alone. Part 3, Entitlement turns to obsession. After the confrontation at my apartment, I hoped things would cool down. I thought maybe my parents just needed time to process the fact that they weren't going to get a dream mansion handed to them on a silver platter. But they didn't cool down. They got worse, way worse. About 2 weeks after they showed up yelling at my door. I closed on a small, 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't flashy, built in the early 2000s, with a nice backyard and a garage that needed a little love. But it was mine. Paid for in full, no mortgage. For the first time in my life, I felt secure. I didn't give my new address to anyone except my best friend and my lawyer, who was helping me set up a trust with the rest of the winnings. I was careful not to post anything online. I even kept my real estate records private. I wanted a clean slate, away from the drama. But they found me anyway. One afternoon, just a few days after I moved in, I was unpacking a box in the kitchen when I saw a car pull into the driveway. My heart dropped. It was my parents. I didn't even have time to process how they'd found me. My mom got out of the car holding a covered dish, like it was just a casual visit. My dad stayed behind the wheel, looking annoyed. I didn't open the door. Instead, I watched through the peephole as my mom rang the bell again and again. Then she started knocking, then pounding. Sweetie, I brought lasagna. We just want to talk. I stayed silent. She kept knocking. Eventually, I cracked the door open, just enough to make eye contact, and said, "How did you find this address?" She gave me a sweet smile. "Your cousin works for a title company. You didn't think we wouldn't find out where our daughter lives, did you?" My stomach turned. They had tracked me down using family connections. I felt violated, exposed. I told her I wasn't comfortable with unannounced visits and that I had already explained my position. Then her smile vanished. "You're really doing this? You're really going to cut us out like we're nothing?" "I'm not cutting anyone out," I said. "I'm setting boundaries." Her response: she dropped the lasagna on the porch with a loud clang, turned around and stormed off. My dad didn't say a word, just stared at me with this look, like I was a stranger. They drove off without another word. That night, I installed security cameras, and I'm so glad I did. Because a few days later, while I was at work, I got a notification from my doorbell cam. My parents were back. This time they brought company, my uncle and aunt. They were knocking, peeking through windows, even trying the doorknob. I called the police. By the time I got home, they were gone. But the officers had spoken with them and warned them to stay off my property. It wasn't an arrest, but it was a record. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong again. The following week, I got an email from an anonymous tipper, claiming I had stolen the lottery winnings from a joint ticket with my dad. It was total nonsense. I had bought the ticket alone, with cash at a gas station on the way home from work. I had proof, video surveillance, receipt, everything. But still, they filed a lawsuit. Yes, my own parents sued me. The claim: that we had made an oral agreement to split the winnings if we ever won. It was baseless and got thrown out quickly. But the damage was done. I had to hire a lawyer, file paperwork, take time off work, and relive the whole thing in court documents. It was humiliating. And worst of all, they had officially declared war. I remember sitting in my living room after the first court hearing, just staring at the wall. These were the people who raised me, who tucked me in at night, who helped me with homework and drove me to school and took me to Disneyland when I was 10. And now they were trying to tear me apart over money. Not because they were desperate, not because they were homeless or starving, but because they felt entitled. They felt I owed them. And when I didn't give in, they decided to destroy me. Part 4, the turning point. The lawsuit my parents filed didn't last long. The judge dismissed it almost immediately once my legal team presented the proof. Store security footage of me buying the ticket alone, time-stamped receipts, and a sworn statement from the store clerk confirming I was by myself. But it still shook me to my core. The fact that it even went that far was enough. I realized I couldn't keep playing defense anymore. This wasn't just a toxic family situation. It was a targeted campaign to guilt, shame, and manipulate me into giving away the one thing I had worked my whole life to gain: freedom. So I made a decision. I was done explaining. I was done apologizing. I was done begging people to understand my side. I was going to take control of the story. First, I wrote a long email to the entire extended family. Yes, the aunts, uncles, cousins, even the distant ones I barely knew. I kept it respectful but honest. I laid out every single detail, the exact amount I had won and what I did with it, my offers to help my parents in reasonable ways, their $1 million house demand, the surprise visit to my home, the lawsuit. I even attached court documents and the security cam screenshots of them showing up at my house uninvited. Then I ended the email like this: I will no longer be engaging with family members who continue to disrespect my boundaries, spread false information, or attempt to manipulate me. If you still believe I'm the villain in this story after seeing the truth, that's your choice, but I will not be a part of that narrative anymore. I hit send, then I turned off my phone. The fallout was instant. My inbox flooded. Some messages were angry, defensive cousins. One uncle who called me cold-hearted, and even my mom who wrote, "How dare you air our private business to everyone?" But others were supportive. My cousin Jenny replied first. She apologized for believing the worst and said she had no idea how deep it went. She even shared screenshots of the group chat my mom had created, where they'd been painting me as greedy and emotionally unstable. More cousins followed. Even my godmother called me crying, saying she felt awful for judging me too quickly. The tide had turned, and that's when I made my boldest move yet. I went no contact, blocked my parents' numbers, blocked their emails, changed the locks again just in case, sent a cease and desist through my lawyer, formally telling them to stop showing up at my house or contacting me directly. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was also the most freeing. For the first time since the lottery win, I could breathe without constantly looking over my shoulder. No knocks at the door, no Facebook smear campaigns, just peace. And slowly, the silence began to heal me. But here's the most unexpected part. About a month later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, handwritten. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity won. It was from my younger brother. He's 19, and up until all this, we'd been close. I'd promised to help pay for his college before everything went sideways. I assumed he hated me now too. But the letter said something different. "I'm sorry, Mom and Dad made it sound like you abandoned us. But now I see what really happened. I don't want money, I just want to talk again." I cried. He was the first person from my immediate family to truly understand. Not just forgive me, but see me. We met for coffee a week later. It was awkward at first, but good. He told me how my parents had been using the whole situation to guilt him. Saying things like, "Your sister ruined this family, and she doesn't care about us anymore." He told me he didn't want to be part of that anymore, that he wanted a relationship with me, not just the version of me they created. It meant the world. Part 5, a new chapter begins. Rebuilding my life without my parents was a strange, painful process. Even with my younger brother back in my corner, there were moments when I questioned everything. Was I too harsh? Should I have given in just to keep the peace? But every time those doubts crept in, I reminded myself, peace built on guilt isn't peace, it's control. And I wasn't going to live under anyone's thumb, not anymore. In the months that followed, I made real changes. I finally quit my job, the one I'd stayed at out of fear and obligation, and started doing freelance work I actually enjoyed. I donated to causes that meant something to me, quietly and without fanfare. I set up an education fund, not for my parents' idea of family, but for kids in foster care who had no support system at all. It felt right, and the more I built a life on my own terms, the more the noise faded. Sure, some relatives still won't speak to me, but others came around, slowly but surely. One even told me, "You inspired me to finally put up boundaries with my mom." That hit hard. Then came the biggest twist of all. 6 months after the lawsuit fiasco, I got a letter in the mail from a lawyer representing my parents. At first, I panicked. Was this another round of legal nonsense? Another attempt to harass me? No, it was an apology. Well, sort of. Apparently, they had finally gone too far, even for some of their own allies. When the smear campaign failed and the lawsuit backfired, people started pulling away from them. Their church friends, neighbors, even some of my mom's siblings. The letter said they wanted to rebuild the relationship, that they'd been misguided, that they only wanted the best for me. But there was no mention of the lawsuit, no ownership of the lies they spread, no apology for showing up uninvited or dragging me through court. Just vague words and empty olive branches. I never responded, not because I was angry, but because I was free. I wish I could wrap this up with a perfect bow and say they changed, that we reconciled, that everything is happy now. But that wouldn't be real. What's real is this. I learned that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choice, about protecting your peace, your boundaries, your future. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is to walk away. And that's the end of this wild journey. What started as a dream come true turned into a painful lesson about entitlement, manipulation, and the true cost of setting boundaries. Would you have handled things the same? And that's the end of this wild journey. What started as a dream come true turned into a painful lesson about entitlement, manipulation, and the true cost of setting boundaries. Would you have handled things the same way? Or would you have caved under pressure from your family? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your take. And if you loved this story, don't forget to hit that like button. Subscribe and ring the bell for more Best of Reddit reality. New stories are dropping every week, and you won't want to miss what's coming next.